Hey, it's Shilpa here, and it's part 2 of the lessons learned from my first 15,000 private case logins in my HomeoQuest program. So, we started on the HomeoQuest project back in September 2000. Things started slowly for me, but then I seriously picked up, and here I am in with my first 15,000 private case logins and tens of thousands of logins from my network, which is another staggering milestone for us to imagine because there are so many patients being impacted through the software around the globe. So this is part 2. If you haven't checked part 1, you can go back to the last video on this page on the left side of the page. And today I want to address the top question you've asked in my HomeoQuest survey. So when practitioners start using the entire database of repertories, they have this concern. How can I possibly know what's the best repertory for my cases? What repertories do you use for cases with lots of mental symptoms? What repertories do you use for cases with lots of pathological symptoms? Do you repertorize every case? Do you use repertories? Do you use rubrics from more than one repertory in the same analysis? Am I going to end up in a big mess if I do? Well, you don't. And there are several simple strategies that will help you. And to start with, it is not about one book. I've talked about this before and it's worth underlining. It is not about one repertory or one book, and it's also not about repertorizing every case in your database. It's about choosing the best tool and the best strategy for the case in front of you. So for most of my cases, I do a full-on repertorization, a quest analysis, a remedy comparison, and I confirm my remedy through these 3 different types of search engines and make that final prescription. But for lots of other cases, I simply do not repertorize. I pull out my program, I type in the patient's keywords, I explore those weird rubrics or out of the box remedies that come up in those rubrics, and I do end up with a pretty useful quick prescription and I get started. So often these prescriptions create as dramatic a result as those really full-on repertorized cases with multiple confirmations. So I'm not saying repertorization does not matter, and certainly for some cases, repertorization may be the only tool that really matters. But the reality is you don't have to go a full-scale pro-level repertorization for every case to get that success that you're looking for. So don't let that hold you back. Don't be afraid to, open the software if you don't want to repertorize. Don't be afraid to quickly type in a few keywords in one of the search engines and find a weird keynote or find an unknown remedy you never would have thought of. It's all about how good you are with trying to manage your database, right? And at the end of the day, what really is more important is how good is your connection with your patient and how good you can pick up those key symptoms at the right stage. It's much more important than strictly following the rules and guidelines of how to repertorize and what book should you use, right? And another important thing is being able to pick and choose the best repertory for a case using the stages template. So what I do is once I know a stage, I will invariably work out the best books that I should check out to work for my case. And this has made my life extremely easier, and that's exactly what we're going to talk today. So I've just opened up my program here, and let's look at the best repertories to work at different stages. And we'll start with stage 1, okay? And these are the cases at stage 1 where you're looking at only pathological symptoms and conditions because that's what you have from your patient. Now the most important books I found at this stage are Clark's clinical repertory and Borki's repertory. Now somehow the way I've found is that these are the 2 very strong repertories that come up every time I've put in a clinical condition in my repertory search. And then last but not, these are the most powerful old books that we have. And then obviously it's also the complete repertory. And I'll tell you how I use them and what's the difference between them. So if I'm looking at a condition, so say for example, the other day I was looking at retinal detachment. Okay, now you can see there are loads of different rubrics that come up from every repertory there, from Kent's repertory, from complete repertory, from Boricki, Clark, and Nair. And I'll tell you what's the difference, having gone through these rubrics so many times in the past. If you look at this rubric from Kent, and you'll see there are about 4 remedies here, 5 remedies: gels, epis, aurum, digitalis, phosphorus. Now just check Boricki, and suddenly you'll find some really out of the box remedies that you've never really imagined. Aurum mure, jaboranda, naphthalene. Let's look at jaborandi. So this is a remedy I've never actually thought about ever, about retinal detachments. And look at that, retinal images retained long after using eyes. Sort of this, everything appears hazy and vision becomes indistinct. Let's look at irritation from electric or artificial light. If you go back and you look at naphtha, again, insensible, eyes have a glassy appearance, pupils are much contracted. So in Clarkey, you will find something about, it's a hydrocarbon obtained from coal tar. And then if you go and check more into the eyes, you'll find detached retina, shiny body in vitreous, white patches on the retina of oxalate, sulfate, carbonate of calcium. So you see, these are the remedies you never found in your basic Kent's repertory. You go to Clarkey, and again, gelsemium and naphtha, those are the 2 ones. If you go to Nair, there's digitalis. So what I've found is Boricki and Clark are really, really strong. And obviously, if you go to Rogers' complete repertory, you will find all these repertories that have been mentioned, all these remedies that have been mentioned. But then you'll also find some new interesting remedies. So say, for example, this is lanthanides. So that's what you found here, Erbium carbonicum. So this new remedy would not have existed in the older ones. But then also find something like natrum salicyclicum. So again, this is a remedy, it would have come from one of the cured cases. And if you go and check into Boricki, you have retinal hemorrhage, albuminic retinitis with hemorrhage. So you see, such a lot of information you get beyond your traditional books, beyond your, just by having a look at the conditions out there. Now, another very important aspect and a bonus of using the complete repertory are for the new sort of rubrics, which you might not find in the older books. So it has the latest clinical new rubrics and the remedies that's something you might not find otherwise. So say, for example, if you look for chemotherapy and its ill effects and what are the remedies there. So only complete would have chemotherapy because obviously it wasn't there in the olden days. And then if you look at the remedies there, you have chinium ars, emerald, phosphorus, arsenicum, cadmium sulf, carcinosin, china, apicac, and nux vomica. Leukocytes diminished after chemotherapy. Very interesting rubric here. Again, chinium ars. So if you go on and check that, it's an old remedy, but it has just been found as a new clinical rubric in the recent times. So I think that's what I was looking at. These are the types. I would never repertorize these rubrics because they're too tiny, but they are great references to help me in my prescriptions, just those on-the-spot prescriptions which you need for some patients. Now, at stage 2, the repertories I would look at, so stage 2 again are cases where you'd only have localized symptoms and related to organs and systems. And in these cases, the Boger-Bonninghausen, this is my bread and butter. This is my go-to repertory. This book expands my horizon, the therapeutic horizon, when a remedy does not pop in my head on the spot. So I've created an entire complementary course on how to use this specific repertory and it's called Mastering the Bojo-Bonninghausen Repertory. So I highly recommend that you check that out if you haven't done so already. But the bottom line is, you can pick any chapter, you can pick any and you can look out for the key therapeutic rubrics for that chapter, for that organ or system, for almost any condition in your entire body. So that's my book for stage 2. Now, when we come to stage 3, these are those cases where you have a great balance of peculiar physical and mental generals and concomitants, where you find that connection between mind and body. And that's so important. So this is a big stage, and repertorization is the heart and soul of this stage. So there are lots of different strategies here, and most people would choose one big repertory and just stick with that, but I would not actually do that in my cases. And this is because I select groups of repertories on my case, depending on the way the patient presents in stage 3. So say, for example, lots of cases at this stage come with predominant mental symptoms. So basically, I choose some key Kentian repertories in my analysis. So if I'm using a repertory search, in my search options, I'll quickly go and select key Kentian repertories like complete, Kent, Nair, Lipez, Roberts, and Jeremy Sher's Q repertory. So these are the remedies I'll search, and these are the remedies I'll find my symptoms from. Now, I use the Q repertory by Jeremy Sher and Murali's thematic repertory, which is a part of the complete repertory. So if you go into the complete, and you'll find the Murali's thematic repertory here. So these are the rubrics I would choose. Or again, if I'm looking at Jeremy's Q repertory, it's a beautiful book, where he's given you some key generals, or you can't call them rubrics. And if I cannot place my patient's word in one concise rubrics, this is where I come to. So say, for example, I was using, the theme of snakes. So it could be something I could use where my patient has things revolve around snakes. So say, for example, they could have a really strong fear of snakes, but fear of snakes doesn't really, there's something more to it. If they see snakes, no matter, they are terrified of snakes, they are fascinated with snakes, they might breed snakes, or they could think they were a snake in their past life. So if there is this whole big sort of, most of the thing, a very strong component of snakes in and around their lives, then this could be a general that I could use for my patients. So it's a very out of the box way of using a theme. Or if things around money, there are so many patients, it's not just about fear of poverty, but money mindedness is a very big part of that patient. Then money is a theme I could use from Jeremy's. Normally you would have to use 3 or 4 related rubrics, cross references, and combine them. But here you find beautiful rubrics, and which can actually accommodate so many different rubrics together in a theme that you can use for your patient. Another way I use now there are cases, now these are the mental sort of cases. What about those with predominant physicals and pathological generals? And so here again, my go-to cases. So if I'm in my repertory search, I will select the Bonninghausen book. So I'll select the I'll again select the complete, because remember, the complete has both a Kentian and a Bonninghausen background to it. There's a lot of generals, and so it uses both philosophies. So I'll still use the complete, but I'll use the Bonninghausen, the Boricke, the Boger, and the Clarke. So these white ones, they are my go-to Bonninghausen repertories. And they have the generalization concept at the heart. So when I'm mixing rubrics, that's the question so many people asked me, what do you do if I'm mixing two different the rubrics from different repertories? And at that point, my strategy is I tend to separate analysis for mentals and physicals. So for example, if I have the mentals, I'll use the Kent and repertories and repertorize them in sheet 1, and then for the physicals, I'll generalize them and repertorize them in sheet 2. And then I'll find what are the common repertories, common remedies in those two sheets using my multi-sheet repertorization and pick the best remedy. Now, there could be a possibility where you do not have one common remedy in the mentals and the physicals, and that's fine. And that is when I then make a decision whether I want to use those two separate remedies at different times, in series, or complement each other. But I make my decision based on facts. So I do not lose the balance of a case by prescribing a remedy that is only covering the mind, only covering the body. So this is something which has been so helpful, and it has played a huge success, in my success rate. It has played a really big part. So the other thing are cases with prominent causative factors, and in this case, I love Clark's clinical repertory. There's this whole big hidden chapter which I never knew about causative factors, about causative rubrics. So something like, things which are caused by cold air or draft of air when perspiring, hot inhaled from fire. And you can sometimes find really weird remedies here which you do not find in, say, a Kent's repertory or a Bonninghausen's repertory. So I found this really obscure chapter with sort of very interesting rubrics and causative phenomena which you might miss out on. Bad effects of lobster salad, or bad effects of drinking water or wine, or these are some really interesting rubrics that I've found to be very useful, just making those quick prescriptions again. Now, cases with peculiar keynotes and weird sensations, and this is where I found Robert's Sensation as such a beautiful book there with so many weird sensations. And I remember there was this one case where there was and I'll never forget that, because that was the rubric I only found in one repertory, and that was Robert's Sensation as if. And I'll tell you that it was a sensation of something alive in the chest, right? And I put in alive sensation, and you get lots of different things, alive sensations, but it was in, Nair's repertory had it, which was something alive as if something was hopping in the chest. So this was the aspect which I did not find in any other big repertories. And then Robert's Sensation had it beautifully, as if something was jumping in, because the patient's exact words was, there's something alive in my chest, it seems, but it's like it's jumping at times. And I thought, how weird was that? Where would I ever find it? And Robert's Sensation had it, something alive jumping in the chest. And then of course Nair's had it as well, which was hopping in the chest, which I did not find in the other big books like the Kent and the Complete. So you see, you should never underestimate any small repertory in spite of expanding databases. And then there are some rubrics, some survey questions where they ask me, where do I find the constitutional symptoms? And constitutional symptoms are something I will never repertorize, but they are great to just refer. And again, my go-to book is Nair's, and in that you have a chapter called Stages of Life and Constitutions. And this is one terrific book, and the other one is Clark's in Temperaments. So this is again a beautiful chapter where you have so many tiny rubrics, but so helpful when you simply want to use a constitutional makeup as a differential diagnosis for that final elimination. So if you open Nair again and you check out that chapter, you will find you have symptoms of every stage of life, from boys and children to infants and newborns and men, women, older people, and with all sorts of different constitutions. And I could spend hours just going through this chapter and looking at these different constitutions and checking them out in my Metro Medica. So a wonderful chapter if you are differentiating based on constitutions. And then last we come to stage 4, and stage 4 is where I use group analysis or kingdom classification information. And the best books here is obviously all stage 3 books apply at this stage, but the complete repertory here for me is a big bonus because it has the latest new provings and new rubrics and new remedies that are constantly added to it. So to be frank, the best results I've found at stage 4 are when I use the Quest analysis, because this is where I repertorize not just from the repertories but also the mater medica. So I highly recommend you to take my complimentary course called Success in Complex Cases to understand how I use the Quest working at stage 4. But the other 3 repertories which really help me at stage 4 are, apart from the complete, are Jeremy Sher's Cure repertory, where I use mental themes, and then this is a surprise, but I use Boger's Synoptic Key. And you'll wonder why, and I'll tell you, this is a beautiful book at stage 4. It is not just a pathological book at stage 1, 2, or 3, or a therapeutic book. And I'll give you really a very small example I've recently used. If you go to the generalities chapter, and you will find some beautiful pathological generals and physical generals, right? But these are not just physical generals, they are mind, body, and soul generals. So say, for example, if I was looking at black, this is a rubric that is so expansive. It goes right from darkness of the mind and black depression to the blackness of the skin, the pigmentation. It could be black nails, it could be black lesions, it could be black hemorrhoids. And I've used this rubric to generalize blackness or generalize darkness, and so many beautiful prescriptions made from these rubrics like cyclamen and baptisia and sikeli. And that is the beauty of using Boger's pathological generals at stage 4. So I hope this just makes a lot of sense for you, and I hope these different strategies really help you explore and expand the way you're using the repertories and the different types of repertories for your individual cases based on the stages. Okay, so at the end of the day, remember, the books are tools that complement my strategy. And all these strategies are designed to help me find the most successful prescription, no matter what stage my patient is at. And at the very least, they are designed to get me started. And at the end of the day, a good prescription is that which starts the healing process in the right direction. And the strategy is for me not to wait and wait until I find that perfect simillimum. The strategy is to get started with your patient on the healing journey. So it's so important to know your strategy. I'm not saying other strategies are wrong, but this is just what works for me. So what I want you to do now is scroll down and leave a comment for me. Tell me what's the strategy which you found to be the best of all the strategies I've discussed in the video. Give me a reaction. Give me a thumbs up, give me a thumbs down. If you love it, share this video, but just go down and give me a reaction. Thank you.